What's up, guys? George back again to do another review. This one is for the Bon Scott book, The Last Highway, written by Jesse Fink. It was just released, I think, in October of this year, 2017. Going into this book, I had read mixed reviews of it. A lot of people seem to think a lot of this is bullshit in this book. I was one of those people. However, after reading everything that's in here, you know, you can't tell, obviously, how true a lot of this stuff is because Bon is not around anymore. Basically, Jesse went and interviewed a few of his girlfriends that are still living. What's her name? Patty Bishop, and there was another girl in here, Holly X. I guess she doesn't use her real name, but and he had interviewed one of his other girlfriends from Australia, Silver Smith, I think her name was, or maybe she was from England. I think it was Silver Smith. Years ago. She had passed away a little while ago, but also interviews a couple of the guys from a band called Critical Mass that had a record out on A&M back in 1980 who Bon was friends with. This thing really digs into his background as far as his drinking goes, drug use goes, and basically the night he died and everything afterwards, like the Back in Black sessions. And I've always heard that Bon was in rehearsals for a lot of that stuff on Back in Black, and I always believed that some of the lyrics were used on that record. There's a lot of tongue-in-cheek lyrics on that record that just seem like his. I know the band's pretty adamant about them saying that Brian wrote everything on there, which I think at the time they had to be, to give Brian really a fair shake as far as replacing Bon Scott, because I mean, he had an incredible, overwhelming task of replacing someone like Bon Scott, and I think he did it beautifully. And just his, you know, over the years, his personality over the years has made him, especially me, a favorite of mine as a human being, just, you know, first and foremost, rather than just a rock singer in a hard rock band. So I get, like, I get that they're real adamant about saying Brian wrote everything for Back in Black. I just have a hard time believing that. And I'm not taking anything away from Brian. Some of the lyrics on that album were just, you know, in the style of Bon, but so good that it's hard for me to imagine anybody else wrote them, if that makes sense. But a lot of the end of this book deals with the night that Bon died. There's a few accounts of what actually happened to him. Some people believe that it was alcohol poisoning or asphyxiation from throwing up in his mouth and not be able to clear it. Other people believe it was a heroin overdose. But back in those days, heroin's, you know, not like it is today. Today it's a garbage drug. Back then it was a designer drug like cocaine and speed, I guess. But when you mix that kind of stuff with alcohol, it's definitely not good. It'll kill you. And I think that could be what happened to him. Obviously, none of us were there. And it's funny, the guy, which I had no idea, the guy that Alistair, the guy that was with Bond that night, Alistair Kinnear, or whatever his name is, I had no idea he was dead. I remember reading the article back in Classic Rock about the night he died with Alistair, and it just seemed like the article was like 5 years ago. It turns out it was like 12 years ago or some shit. It's weird how time flies, but apparently he's lost at sea. He went out on a boat with another 2 friends or something and disappeared. So he's officially, his cause of death was lost at sea, which is weird. I don't get it, but that's a weird story in itself. Alistair apparently was a drug head, like he liked heroin and coke and that kind of stuff. And there's also an interesting, which could have happened, stored, what do you call them? The interesting theory that the night he died, Alistair, Bond died earlier in the night, and Alistair didn't know what to do with him, because there's claims in here that Alistair was calling one of his girlfriends, kind of panicked about 11 o'clock at night, or 12 o'clock, which is, in other accounts, says they were still out partying. He didn't die until 4 or 5 in the morning. People think, that one theory in here was that Bond died in the car, and Alistair flipped out and didn't know what to do with it, and kind of trying to figure out what to do with the body, not the body, but like, what should he have done? Obviously, if any normal thinking human being would have taken him right to the hospital, but he didn't. So a lot of people think, the theory is that he was riding around with Bond's body in the car, maybe not fully knowing he was dead, and kind of went home and left him in the car and figured he'd deal with it in the morning. I don't know. It's an interesting theory. Obviously, like I said, none of us will know the true story of what happened that night. Some people in here, like the guys in Critical Mass, said that they never saw Bond doing any kind of drugs whatsoever. He was just a drinker. But I, reading more into the book and the lifestyle back then, I would probably figure he was doing something that, something he probably shouldn't have been doing, especially with drinking alcohol. But also paints a picture that he was pretty unhappy, and was basically ready to leave AC/DC if Highway to Hell didn't do anything. Because if you're a fan like I am, you know the story, that the slow climb from High Voltage up until Highway to Hell was 5 years, but it took that many years for them to build a live following and then finally start selling records. But and other people say that, like, one of the girlfriends said that he was just not, he felt like he was going to be fired if Highway to Hell wasn't successful, that he was going to be replaced anyway. And at the time, he wanted to do a solo album, and just all kinds of different theories, different stories from different girlfriends and friends. But kind of making the Young brothers seem to be, I don't want to say assholes, because just perfectionists, and I mean, it's their baby, you know what I mean? I don't think it was quite as bad as some people make it out to be in this book, as far as their attitude towards things. Other people said that Malcolm and Angus, other people in this book say that Malcolm and Angus were the nicest guys in the world. They bring up Brian Johnson being let go 2 years ago. Again, there's no real official statement from Brian, an AC/DC, of how that went down. People think they just kicked him to the curb. I don't think so. And obviously, with Malcolm Young's funeral this week, with everybody showing up, with Brian showing up and Phil Rudd showing up, and Mark Evans was there, and Cliff Williams, and all together. I just don't think that was the case. I think they're all brothers in arms. As far as the band goes, Brian just couldn't do it, and was it hasty? I think maybe, but to kind of let him go and get Axl in there, I think that was a hasty move. But I also understand that they had obligations for the live shows too. That's why they didn't add any shows to that tour. It was just done after the 10 overseas and 10 here. But so we'll see what happens. It was good. If anything good comes out of Malcolm's death, it was good to see them all together, even with Mark Evans. And who knows what that could bring as far as future doings with the band. Hopefully, maybe it'll bring Phil and Angus back together a little bit, and maybe even Mark Evans now that Cliff's gone. Cliff retired, and obviously Brian being back. Hopefully he can. I mean, I know he can do studio work. I don't know if he can do live stuff. That's the problem. But I think at this point the band, should call it a day. Maybe do one last album with these guys and for Malcolm, and that's it. And a sporadic show here and there. But other than that, they have nothing left to prove. They've been around them with, 45 years, almost 44 years. I mean, they had an amazing run. So anyway, I would definitely suggest checking this out. If you're a fan of AC/DC, some of the book might piss you off a little bit like it did me. But I stayed through it. I read through it. And again, it's all hearsay, really, with these interviewers. And there's nobody really connected with the band overall. Like no band members were interviewed for this. Mark Evans, they took snippets from Mark Evans' books in here, or his book in here, and just mentioned it, but mostly interviews with the two old girlfriends, the one passed away a few years ago, and one of his best friends, one of Bond's best friends, Roy Allen, who was from Texas, I think, and he befriended Bond in Florida or something like that. So it was cool to hear some stories with him. But I would check it out if you're a Bond fan, and it's an interesting theory on some of the stuff in there. But anyway, that is it. I'm back doing reviews. Got a ton of CD reviews. I'll have a new LP update. Scored a bunch of Power Pop 7 inches that I'll show in my next LP update. I'll be doing a Black Friday haul as well, the Record Store Day haul, and the movies. I'll probably do that all in one video because I didn't pick up much, especially the Record Store Day stuff. I only picked up 2 things. But I picked up a bunch of movies, so we'll see how that goes. I might just keep the Record Store Day stuff with the LP update. But anyway, that is it. Next time I do a book review, if I do any, I'm reading right now. I'm on an AC/DC kick. I'm reading AC/DC Facts by Susan Messino. So, pretty cool book. She's written some other stuff about them. So anyway, that is it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace.